Hello, everyone. Today I have another guest. He is Mr. Archer. He is very famous for his report, Archer report, and he is trying to contribute with transhuman human parties, and he has very interesting views. He has very interesting strategy on technology and youth developments and many interesting point of views. So he's from Australia. So hello, Mr. Archer. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. It's very exciting to be here to talk about technology, the USTP, detonation, Archer report, and other related topics. It's really good to see you.
Okay, very good. Can you please introduce yourself with your experience, with your business and activities, with your Archer report for our audience?
Sure. So, not many people will know the Archer report yet because it's very new, but a lot of people know me from Detonation, which is my original show. And on Detonation, which will still be going on, we'll still be doing it. We did a lot of talking about the United States Transhumanist Party, technology, related topics. We interviewed a lot of futurists and people in that realm, and it was very exciting. We had a lot of fun, and so that's where a lot of people will know me from. But yes, we do have a new show now, the Archer Report. You yourself came on that because we want to talk to, just like the World Talent Forum that you run over there. We want to meet interesting, innovative people that are on the cusp of changing the world and changing how systems work. And we think that's very important. Changing how things work structurally is very empowering.
I just want to know about the present situation in Australia. What are the conditions in Australia? What the COVID situation?
Sure. So mostly the COVID situation, it spiraled out of control in March, April, May, and then with a lot of government investment, a lot of restrictions and lockdown, they actually brought it right down to almost zero. And then only because of a few slip-ups here in Victoria, for example, the issue is now out of control again. So COVID is exploding again.
Okay. You have a very interesting initiative on new technologies as well as transhuman. This is very interesting. Can you explain? And we want to know details like how you work with this new technology and transhuman, and what's your philosophy? What's your objective?
Okay, so to talk about that, I mean, firstly, you have to explore of you asking about motivations.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so that's easy. The world faces a series of problems, challenging problems, which government and corporate industries and other related fields cannot overcome. And therefore, we have to turn to technology, which has always been one of the core components of arresting massive inefficiencies in our global system. So Henry Ford, invention of the car, or invention of medicines, or invention of the airplane to overcome distance, or the invention of the internet, or invention of the wheel. These things change. These inventions and transfer of knowledge change human structures and human civilization on a much broader, wider basis than any revolution or any political change or any government can. Government's ideation, all this sort of stuff, in terms of the political economy, can only do so much to arrest some people's problems at a specific point in time. But a technological change can empower billions and millions of people over the course of human history in order to advance. So what we're searching for is human innovators, change, people who will change and invent and create rather than destroy. It's not saying that destruction doesn't create anything.
Okay. One specific thing I have in mind at present, many of the people actually now unemployed because of the COVID-19, even in Malaysia or any other country. When I discuss, I find that, let's say, South Asia, many countries in Asia Pacific, even in North America and Europe, many people goes unemployed. What do you think about that? Do you think that is there any solutions with this technology and the techno policy?
The only solution is the UBI. That's it. That's the answer. Is you can only create a universal basic income to hobble a lot of the changes, because coronavirus is one wave of labor disruption that's going to be compounded by technological innovation, and technological innovation will compound a whole new wave of labor disruption. And the accelerant on the fire, the fuel on the fire is COVID. So, because people distrust physical contact now, that means more waves of technological labor disruption will happen. So this is only the first wave of labor disruption as innovations sweep by. So no, it's not hospitality, tourism, retail. Retail was dying anyway. Everybody knew that. Amazon, Walmart, all the big ones, eBay, everything, the internet was disrupting retail anyway. Retail was always going to die a very slow, painful death. So you can put that one aside. Hospitality was always based on disease vectors, and it was always correlated to how healthy agricultural systems are, and how much agricultural systems are tied to the food industry and hospitality. So hospitality no one's surprised by the labor disruptions in hospitality. No one's surprised by tourism and retail. So, and tourism, if without globalization, you don't have tourism. Your tourists, people going from north of Malaysia to the south, or to the different islands across, it's not enough to make up for the millions of Chinese tourists that would go to Malaysia, right? And make up if you shut down the borders between Bangladesh and India. Once those Indian tourists stop coming to Bangladesh, you can't make that up with internal tourism. Bangladeshis don't want to see what's on the other side of Bangladesh. It's just more of Bangladesh, right? So none of these are surprising. But what is surprising is, in terms of labor, is that we were still using so many people for menial tasks, and that it's come down to so McDonald's still hires people to run registers. That's kind of crazy. We would have thought to seen that labor disruption years ago, but they keep that process going on because it suits business needs and other needs. So no, I think nobody's surprised by these labor disruptions. These are just these are just the first waves, but the second, third, and fourth waves, lawyers, the cops, police, white collar jobs, mostly everything can fall to automation anyway. You can have almost a delaborized world with a significant amount of advance of technology. So the only answer that any government can have is UBI. Otherwise, you end up with war. And war, what the good thing about war, what war will do is it'll throw people into a meat grinder. You have too many people, bomb them, nuke them, send them to war, they die, then they're not your problem anymore, right? So you'll see war as a solution. You drum up nationalism, you send them off to war, people die. That's another way to get rid of the problem. So if you don't want to kill people, you have to give them money, right? Because otherwise there's not enough jobs. And even if government or in jobs that are just there for the sake of jobs, all of that costs money anyway. And we don't find a significant enough when you look at the end of technology, the technology has its limits. We know the fundamentals of physics now, right down to quarks and everything like that. So we know the limits of physics, and we know that robots can basically do most of the labor. We're just looking for a few more things. So UBI, universal basic income. That's the only way you can pacify the nation at the moment as we see it.
Okay, very interesting. You are talking about universal basic income. I want to learn, or I want to know more about Australian ecosystems. Like, your healthcare, your educations, your agricultures, your construction industry, and overall the 360-degree angle of your economy. So how it works, what's the present condition, and what will happen next 3 years?
So the Australian economy is easy. Most of its wealth is generated from the outback, which is iron ore and gold deposits, which has been fueling a Chinese economic boom. Without the Chinese economic boom, those coal and iron ore deposits start to dwindle. Therefore, the wealth of the country starts to dwindle. The positive on the back of that, is that there's only 25 million people, which means that there's enough wealth to be redistributed to its population through jobs programs, through the government, and through these other mechanisms. And that's what you've seen. So on healthcare, we have what you call a government-leaning mixed system. So government takes more control of healthcare than private sector, but private sector does take care of some aspects of the healthcare system. Now, why is that? Why would you say, even though it's inefficient and it costs more, why would the government take control of the healthcare system, even though it's inefficient? Well, it's for national security reasons, because if you sell off your healthcare system to private interests, that means in an event of war or something like that, it becomes a fifth column, right? So you could have, like, let's say country X controlled the healthcare system through a corporation. In the event of a war, they could tell that corporation to shut down your country's healthcare system. So therefore, you lose control of your healthcare system. So the government is more on the side of taking control of the healthcare system than giving it away to private interests. So menial things, less important things, are given to the private sector to take care of. But that means in the event of any disruption, the government will always have control of its own healthcare system and won't be held hostage by a foreign power. Now, that's not the same in the UK. The UK has sold off every part of its healthcare system. The NHS is completely destroyed, which means it will be beholden to whoever owns those structures. Now, in construction has been underpinned by lots and lots of subsidies, which is mainly funneled into the housing boom. We've seen a housing boom that's correlated to the baby boomer generation and an overproduction in houses, and now the housing boom is over, and so you're seeing a depressed asset prices, which is good for millennials. It's good for Generation Z. It's not good for baby boomers who had their wealth and their retirements tied up into those assets. So that's interesting. In terms of sport and all that, there's been a huge investment in sport. That's surplus. That's whatever. And what else did you want to know about?
Okay, in terms of global relationships, like what type of business relationship and global relationship Australia now they have, and specifically, I'm more interested about China and Australian relationship. So what's going on?
On the economic front, it's very simple. China is Australia's largest trade partner. A good 30-40% of our trade is with China, and mainly towards exports. A lot of the since about 2015, 2010, 2015, the imports of Chinese, the import of Chinese investment has started to be curtailed. They've started to worry about that. That's just they're riding off the back of a Japanese scenario. So in the 1980s, Japan, when it was going through its boom as well, it's a post-World War II boom underpinned by the American alliance. We had the same issue. Japan was getting very rich, and they were buying a lot of Australian assets, Australian farms, Australian this, Australian that. And the government got very worried about that. And they've done the same thing with China now. They've started to place a lot of restrictions, and that's only intensified. And with COVID, that's intensified even more. So that's interesting. So they're a big economic partner. The other relationship Australia has, the only other one that matters, is the United States, which is the big security partner. They protect the Indo-Pacific region, and we have to balance between the two. And that's the same as a lot of people in the Asia Pacific region, as you well know, Japan being beholden to the United States, but pretty much everybody else has to balance between these two factors. Taiwan, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, and then it go once you start hitting Indonesia, and then once you hit the other way, it's India, China. So Myanmar, Bangladesh, over there, Pakistan. So it's India, China. But on the other side, it's China, United States, and it's security economic front. So security, yeah. So the only other relationship that really matters is the United States, and that's security matters. So yes, there has been a pushback economically against China, but we'll have to see what happens.
Okay, very interesting. One specific thing, as I know that Australia is a diverse, different cultural people. They live together. So, can you give us any like experience that what's the present situation of different countries people, even many Asian people, they go to Australia, they're taking their immigrations and many more things. Is it helpful for Australia, or how it works? Or diversified culture is helpful for a specific country? Or what's your strategy? How do you think?
So you mean, how does multiculturalism function in Australia?
Yes.
Do you want what type of answer do you want?
No, it's your own opinions. I just want to know.
Yeah. There's many ways this can work. I mean, Australia is well known for having a multicultural society, but a lot of that multiculturalism comes from Europe. Actually, it's post-World War II refugees that came here. I live in Melbourne, which is a huge Greek city. It's the largest Greek city outside of Greece, which is kind of interesting. So it gets Athens and then Melbourne. So you can see the huge influx of people there. But in terms of a lot of the other populations, yeah, there's a huge European multiculturalism. Same with the United States. The United States is massively German, for example. There's a lot of Germans that are in the United States, and they kept quiet through both wars. So that's kind of interesting when you think about it. But after the European waves of immigration came the Asian waves of immigration, and a lot of those have been refugees from Vietnam. Vietnam War, for example, is a huge one. But there's different waves of immigration as well. And this is an interesting topic because with all of the waves of immigration, you've seen a flatlining of birth rates. You've seen a sort of assimilation of cultures into the new culture of Australia. But again, with just like globally, you see, there's been fears of a rise of Islamism against the multiculturalism. Yeah, and you see this in a lot of European countries, or the United States, or Australia, and So the Islamic immigration and multicultural question is the biggest fear, I'd say. After that, you've got about 400,000 Indians and about 400,000 Chinese as well. And as the geopolitical plays out, you see a lot of pushback against these communities by not just white Australians, but everybody. Because what happens is the geopolitics of these countries starts to play out in real time. And as the economy starts to curtail, you see balkanization of these communities. So you see the communities start to galvanize. And you must have read or must have seen a lot of protests in and around the embassies, in and around universities, in and around other things of pro-Hong Kong Chinese and anti-Hong Kong Chinese, and the Chinese community getting involved in a lot of inter-Chinese conflicts, and then Indians and Chinese attacking each other for different reasons, especially over this border issue. There's been a lot of Indian. And the thing is, it's like, even though Thai or Vietnamese or white Australians or New Zealand Australians or German Australians, they might be out of these issues. What happens is when these two cultures fight, because they're called Australians, then the CCP can say, haha, look, there's racism going on in Australia against these communities by other Australians. And then they pick up on that and then use that to attack the government with. And this is happening all over the world. So this is kind of an interesting development. But normally, Australia has enough wealth to paper over the effects of multiculturalism and distribute the population groups around the land masses and then suppress them with media, culture, and the police and the intelligence services, just like they do in the United States or other multicultural civilizations, Pakistan, Iran, whatever. You suppress these people, and then they don't kick up a fuss, and then they just become an economic unit. And that's been going on quite fine until big geopolitical events.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, very interesting. What's the beautiful cultural things from Australia you want to share with us? Like your food, your cultures, your cultural activities. What are the beautiful things you want to share?
We've got great wine, we've got great beer, we've got great beaches, and people love their cars, I guess.
Okay, very interesting. I think that you are a very good philosopher. You have a very good integration with technology, and you run your own channels, and this is also interesting. But beside that, you have a political point of view. So let's say it's a hypothesis. Let's say you get a chance for serving for Australia. You become a leader or state leaders and something like that. What's the major changes you want to do, or what's your targets as a political person, as a political philosopher? You want to change inside Australia, or you want to make some differentiations in present condition?
Absolutely, we need a bigger advancement and more investment in technology, in technological advances. We need some form of UBI system that replaces the current dole system. It'll be cheaper, be more effective. It'll keep people in a better way, in every way you can imagine. But we also need bigger investments in technology. We also need to reaffirm our relationship with the United States. We have to improve our relationship with India, and we have to, in a big way, and we also have to improve our relationship with Indonesia. I'd love to see a rotating naval yard out at Perth on our western border, where we could have a literal naval enterprise that would kind of be like slot cars, where we could patrol the Indian Ocean, because the Indian Ocean is the new powerhouse. The Pacific is fading away. It's going to fade away more so as China starts to fade, and that Japan will rise to take that place as America also pulls back. So we don't have to worry about patrolling the Pacific as much as we do have to patrol the Indian Ocean. And the Indian Ocean is much bigger, not much bigger, but it's much more important in many ways. And also it's the gateway to Africa in many ways. The many important countries in Africa are on the Indian Ocean. And also with the American withdrawal, the Persian Gulf will be more exposed. So we need to work closely with India in order to secure the Indian Ocean, which means massive patrols, anti-piracy activities, and we can help out there on the west coast of Australia. We need technology, we need smart cities, we need vertical integration with farming. We need an emphasis on utilizing our huge sunray resource for clean energy. We also need to secure shipping lanes to expand our mineral exports in a time of American decline in terms of security. We need to focus on securing what's left of our Great Barrier Reef. It's dying. Lots of the world's reefs dying. There are technological solutions to reinvigorating them, and also our forests. We don't want to see any wildfires or anything like that. We have big problems with our environment, cleaning up our environment and getting our environment back on track. So that's another thing we have to really do. And massive improvements in our cities. Huge improvement. 5G integration, 6G integration, Starlink, linking up with Starlink, all sorts of things.
Like when this kind of improvement need, as per my knowledge, there is huge investment needed. How do you think this kind of investment come for Australia? How let's say you are running your state. So how you do you have any planning? Do you have any strategy when you are talking about smart city, nuclear power plants, or the many interesting global relationships? What the realistic way you can solve these things?
India and Indonesian relationship is not hard. That's very easy. Investment, we just got a $270 billion investment in defense. So it's not hard to find money for defense, which would mean that the Indian Ocean would be done already. On the environment front, no, that's not hard to rally the people around. The people march up and down. They're crying out for that. So anyway, so you could find the money for that. The smart city improvement is not hard because the American corporate structure is changing. They're moving away from Europe. They're moving to South America, sort of. Moving to Asia, but as China starts to slow, and they're going to be looking for partners. So that's not hard either. And Australia has a good relationship with America, which means that corporate investment into Australia for smart city use is not hard. Israel as well. We are big fans of Israel. We're big friends with Israel. Israel has some of the most high tech in the world. Benjamin Netanyahu was over here talking about investing in Australia for smart cities. So that's not hard at all. Working with corporates, not hard. Also, we have a lot of land and a lot of unused space that we can use to build up new cities if we need to. We can build new cities and start from scratch. Our Canberra, which is our capital city, is a planned city. I mean, we have the room and the leg room to build new cities anywhere around the country. It's not hard, just like America could. And yeah, so it's corporate investment in that way. The environment is not hard. The international relationship is not hard. What's hard is getting through the transitionary point, just like all these countries with the changing China problem, which means everybody's about to get really poor.
Okay, one specific things like you are discussing about the relationship of developing nations like Indonesia, India, South Asia, I think Asia Pacific, these markets, and there are many developing countries right now. So what's the way of contribution for this developing economy? How you know about the cultures of different countries like India, even India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, the South Asian continent, and Asia Pacific in, let's say, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Cambodia, and this region. How you know, and
the easiest way for Southeast Asia is through ASEAN. That's very easy, right? ASEAN is the big primary network that you would have to cuddle up to. You don't have to do it bilaterally. Forget about Trump. That's American issues. Australia is still a small country, and we can work with people in a multilateral way. So it's just being friends with ASEAN and seeing what ASEAN wants and doing what ASEAN wants. In terms of India, that's a bilateral relationship that you have to manage on its own, whether it's Modi or somebody else. And Modi is no stupid person, and neither will the next government be, regardless of the BHP, the BNP, whatever it is, the nationalist one gets in or not. Those guys still want relationships, and we still hold a lot of Indian population here in Australia, which gives us a larger voice, right? So India is a special relationship. And also, we're still part of the Commonwealth system, so that means that we also have Commonwealth leverage over them and between. and we're both seeking investment. We're both seeking partnerships. We're supposed to be seeking deals, and via China, these ties will only grow, and we both have a common history anyway against Northeast Asian partners, whether that be Imperial Japan or now China. So India is a bilateral one; it's a special one, and also Australia doesn't share a Pakistan policy. We're on India's side in that. Pakistan is no longer a friend of the United States, even though they were an ally of the United States. They've blown it to bits, smashed it. Now they seem to be lining up with China. So India is a natural partner, natural ally for us, and also we share a common goal with Japan and India in stopping, eventually, curtailing China's rise in the Indian Ocean and stopping piracy for Indian ships and Australian ships through their increasing trade. So India is a bilateral one. We can share a relationship with them. We also share English and many other cultural ties. So India is special, but through Southeast Asia, it's ASEAN. It's quite simple. But if we need to do any other special relationships, Indonesia, example, Indonesia is building the new capital city. For example, we could be leveraging off that and helping them design and build, and using Australian firms and Australian technology to help build that. For example, that's one thing. So there's still room for Southeast Asian integration bilaterally, but I would approach it from a more multilateral angle. And also, right now, it's better if we go multilateral because we know who is who in this time of great change.
Okay, very important strategy. But when you say that you want to do a global relationship, especially developing nations like Indonesia and India and these kind of countries, so my specific point of view is that like there are many underprivileged peoples. How you want to contribute this kind of underprivileged people life? This is number one. Number two, you are talking about macroeconomics. How do you think about microeconomics? Because micro contributions also playing a very good roles in this South Asian market and Asia Pacific market. Let's say in Malaysia, there is a bank Amanah. They are following microfinance initiatives. Even in India and Bangladesh, they are coming with the microfinance institute and concept, and now it's globally recognized. So how do you think about this kind of micro initiative, and how you want to change this like underprivileged people life?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the big topic, right? I mean, this is the big change that's going to be happening in the next 50 years. And microeconomics, the thing is, we have to be careful with microeconomics because we have to work on a macroeconomic scale in order to work on a microeconomic scale. Why? Because India is facing climate change. They're facing changing borders. They're chasing increasing taxes because of their India-China problem. They have space ambitions. They have a growing navy, etc. And we'll have to keep a tether on what type of microeconomics they want and need from Australian banks or Australian corporate institutions or whatever. And this will come from New Delhi. This won't come from the people on the ground. Yes, you'll hear stories about a little firm who goes over and does microeconomics or something, but we don't have that. It's not that capacity. What it is New Delhi will have to say, because India is a complicated place in terms of microeconomics. If you're talking about agriculture, for example, the North and the South are very different in their agricultural needs. The North is a very highly agricultural place. That's where most of the agriculture is done. Lots of food pumped out there. Not so much in the South. But if we're talking about agriculture, who needs the money? Does the South need the money to help balance the North agricultural production, or does the North need money to continue producing? That's not an answer I know. That's an answer that New Delhi knows. And New Delhi will be playing with the internal economics of India for a long time to come. And also, if you want to talk about microeconomics, I mean, this idea will have to be done through genetically modified foods, genetically modified seeds, companies like Monsanto and others that will play into the microeconomic state, because what you want, for example, in agriculture, is you want small micro farmers to increase their yields, right? Can you do that on an organic level? Does it have to be GM, for example? What about pesticides? So does it need R&D in pesticide development? What about insect preparation? You've seen the locust problems going on over in Northwest Africa, and beyond. How do we mitigate against that? Is that a microeconomic problem? Is that a macroeconomic problem? Can we both benefit from that? Can we build up a tolerance to that, a risk tolerance to that? And is that so this is interesting things. In the other fields and sectors of India, I mean, if we're talking about urban infrastructure, do you want a big conglomerate corporation to come in and do things on a microeconomic level, or should we empower through microfinancing? This is the answers, because India does have a lot of students and it has a big intelligence industry, but that gets sucked away. People don't stay in India right now. That hasn't been yourself, for example. You're not in India or Bangladesh. You've gone to Malaysia. A lot of the brainy people leave and go somewhere else. New York, for example, is a huge home to Indians. It's because the brains don't stay in India. They don't stick around. And now they send money back to poorer families and poorer family members, who then do whatever they do with the money, but the brains don't stay there. So, is talent acquisition from the Indian government appropriate, or is sending their people out and sending the information and knowledge back in still the thing? So, yes, we can talk about financing, we can talk about blockchain and Bitcoin, and we can talk about banks doing things. Australia doesn't have the big banking that the United States does, in terms of Goldman Sachs or Lehman Brothers or whatever you want, Bank of America or something, to make a real big microfinancing impact. But what we do have, and we have some banks, ANZ, Commonwealth, whatever. But what we do have is we do have the talent to work out Indian problems and then invest in helping Indians make money with us to mitigate against those challenges. And what are those challenges? New Delhi has to tell us.
Okay, very interesting. There are audience response. Humaira Tanzila, she said, thank you, sir, for your time. She has specific questions to you. She wants to know, what are the initiatives Australia take to prevent the natural disaster?
Oh, what should we take to prevent natural disaster?
Yes. She wants to know, yes, the present conditions, even how you take the initiative.
Is that in Australia specifically?
Yes, specifically Australia.
Okay, so long-term natural disasters and short-term natural disasters. Long-term natural disasters are a global commitment. No one country can commit to changing the outcome of a global natural disaster. And if you want to see the decrease in global natural disasters, we have to see a committed front from all partners and states around the world. I'm looking at Brazil. Stop chopping down your rainforest and turning it into agricultural lands, for example. I'm looking at America. I'm looking at China. I'm looking at Russia. I'm looking at all the countries around the world that are committed to changing the natural environment into commercial operations that deplete the earth and the atmosphere. So that's a long-term commitment. That's not just done on isolation by any one player. In a short term, absolutely, we can help to plant more trees. We could, and we can safeguard the rainforests that still exist. We don't have to all the forests that still exist. We can invest more in saving our Great Barrier Reef, and that's the study of reefs around the world. There's only a few reefs that are untouched by humans at the moment, and studying those is extremely important. Some of those are up near Hawaii, and some in South America. So short term, absolutely. Giving farmers subsidies to rebuild what they have in an environmentally friendly way. You're not going to replace 1 billion animals. Australia had 1 billion animals that died. How do you replace that? Well, you have to. You have to do breeding programs, you have to do seeding programs, you have to try and restore the environment, but then you also have to, when the time comes, remove the undergrowth and do all the things that don't allow. See, one of the problems with the bushfires, for example, was they didn't remove the undergrowth, so that when the fires came, they were so much bigger. And we've seen that in California as well, where environmental people get in and they say, don't ever touch it, don't ever touch it, don't ever touch it. But with a warming world, things brown and then the fuel for the fire is just so much bigger. And this is a problem as well. So you need sustained forest maintenance, if you know what I mean. So that's on the forest front. The coral bleaching is a big problem. Cyclones, these. I mean, it's hard, right? I mean, we can talk about weather warfare. We can talk about the human engineering of the weather and stuff like that. But it's not, even that's not going to help, because that's mainly caused to destroy, and Australia doesn't have that technology. That's a technology that's been subsumed by United States, China, and Russia. So we have to deal with the problems, the overflow effects of weather warfare.
Okay, well, this is a very interesting strategy for sustainability. I think at the present world we have to look for the sustainability and other things. WT Forum also think about the technology as well as the sustainability of human lives. So this is very important. I have a critical question for you. Let's say you want to build up relationship with Indonesia. So Indonesia is one of the largest Islamic countries in Asia Pacific market, like Malaysia as well. So even for their development purpose, they utilize Islamic finance and this kind of things as well. On the other hand, you say that in Australia you have some sort of Islamophobia and this kind of things. So how you can build up better relationship with in that conditions, the same things.
It's very easy. That's very easy to answer. When I thank you for that. That's very easy though. It's Saudi Arabia. And what is Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia is Wahhabist. And if you look at the expansion of most of Islam through Southeast Asia, it's actually a different expansion. It was actually an expansion of quite peaceful version of Islam. The Saudi Islam that you've seen is kind of this medieval type of Islam that's been fueled by a lot of oil money, and they use aggressive Islamic tactics of ISIS and Al Qaeda and terrorist bombings and destruction in order to safeguard the region. And you saw the crescendo of this with Khashoggi. If you remember Khashoggi, that was awful. In the Turkish, they got lured to the Saudi embassy in Turkey, and they butchered him, they tortured him, they cooked him. This was a really bad thing, right? And but that's Wahhabism, and Wahhabism is a very small fraction of Islam. It's well known to be a very small fraction of Islam, and the Indonesian type of Islam, which you see, is not a big deal. It's not a big deal in terms of actual Islamic expansion. So working with Jakarta, or what's the new, whatever the new has never been hard, because they've never been the aggressive Islam that we recognize in the Middle East, that's actually being fought back against by Sunni Muslims, like in Iran, okay, or Shia Muslims, Sunnis. But the Islam has its own internal fracturings. It has moderates, it has peaceful Muslims, and it has extremist Muslims. And I think the Islamophobia that you see is based off a misinterpretation of some of this Muslim aggression, and on a geopolitical level, on a state-based level, Indonesia doesn't fall into an aggressive Muslim play at all. Now, there was some problems in 2000 and something, 2001, 2 or 3, with the Bali bombings. Again, the Indonesians cooperated on every level. The Indonesian government, Jakarta, cooperated on every level to bring those people to justice. And But there's the Wahhabism that's sponsored mainly by Saudi Arabia. And the thing about Saudi Arabia is that country, from Western standards, from Muslim standards, from a lot of Iran, and even Hindu and others, they are kind of sick of Saudi Arabia, and because of their oil, they've been protected. But as American shale revolution takes off, Americans are looking for a fight, and I don't think that they will stand by Saudi Arabia any longer, which has been the reason that they have been able to get away with what they've getting away with. And I think in the next 30 years or something like that, you will see America attacking Saudis and defending Iran. I think that it will change, and Saudi Arabia will find itself on all sides, the regime under attack and Wahhabism on the decline. And the only reason that Islam itself puts up with it is because they hold Mecca and Medina, as you know, as very important religious cities in Islam, and they hold that hostage against Muslims themselves. And so therefore, very peaceful type Muslims find it geopolitically frustrating that Saudi gets away with what it gets away with, destroying their own cultures, civilizations, history, heritage, looting and raping and going across. And so Muslims will turn on them. The Saudi regime will find itself isolated in the future. And I think that's a calculation already made, and therefore being friends with Jakarta is not hard.
Okay, well, I want to share one of my views from this Malaysian context, that I find that Malaysian people are very peaceful. Even here, Muslims are highly educated. Even I find many Muslim women, even if you can observe World Talent Economy Forums, I bring many of the intellectual property and peoples from universities. They are academically very good. They are very good researchers. They handle their family. They handle university, their careers. I want to say that Muslims, there are many peaceful Muslims, those who are modern and those who are taking many modern knowledge and activities, and we have to integrate it in the global community. My most important thing is that, as I am from the South Asian part, we are big fan of Australian cricket. Do you want to share something about Australian cricket? Because even in the long times, Marquis, Steve Waugh, Taylors, Glenn McGrath, Shane Warnes, we are a big fan of the Australian cricket. Can you share something about Australian cricket with our audience?
Sure. I mean, Australian cricket is as a direct result from the British. And as you know, the British invented cricket and expanded cricket across the empire, at the zenith of the empire. So many countries around the world enjoy cricket. And it was a way that they kept the empire glued together. Through a common sport, and it's something that the Americans have not been very good at. Nobody watches baseball. Nobody cares about baseball. Nobody likes NASCAR. Nobody cares about NASCAR. Nobody likes ice hockey. No one cares about ice hockey. Nobody likes anything that they've ever invented in terms of sport. Softball as well. So that's the big difference between the American Empire and the British Empire, is the fact that the sport glued the empire together. And India and Australia, this cricket rivalries, or Bangladesh or Southeast Asia, it's a direct result from the British trying to glue the empire together. So in terms of Australian cricket, no, I love cricket, and I love the Indian interpretation of cricket 2020. I think that's very fun. It's quick, it's sharp, it's good. Very good. So yeah, no, I endorse cricket. I love cricket. I watch cricket, and long live cricket.
And many interesting thing is that, like, even India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, you find that even Sri Lanka, those who are very famous cricketers, they basically join in politics even. Even example from Bangladesh, like Mashrafi bin Murtaza, he was a cricket captain. Now he's a very popular politician, and he do a lot of good jobs. Sachin Tendulkar from India, even from Pakistan, Imran Khan, Prime Minister, he's actually... Yes, in 1992, he's a World Cup winner. So what's the culture of Australia? Australian cricketer, they join in politics, or you utilize the political diplomacy, like cricket diplomacy, like even India, Pakistan, any tensions, they play crickets and whole nations they clap together.
Sport and political culture are pretty separated in this country. It's not like you use sport to become somebody. You play sport for fun, and I think that's the difference of a politics of survival. I think in developing or underdeveloped or whatever country you want to talk about, I think you use what you can to get what you can. Whereas in this country, it's not only fun and you not only get paid well, but you can continue doing it until you die. And I think that's a difference, politics of survival. And I would expect to see less and less people in your countries. I would expect, but I don't think that might be the case, because also getting your voice out in social media is getting harder and harder. So if you have a platform like cricket and the people listen to you in Australia, okay, you can use that as an endorsement or something. But in a country like India, it's more of you get pulled into the orbit of politics rather than jumping into the orbit of politics. Whereas in Australia, you can actually keep that separate. In the UK as well, you can keep that separate. In America, you can keep that separate. So that's just a cultural thing, I think. But I expect that India, you would like China, right? I would never see that because it's a meritocracy. But India, especially India, I would expect to see that cultural idea continue because you get famous through, you get pulled into the orbit, and then the democracy factor, the populist factor, would pull you in. So I would expect to see this in India especially, but the other countries maybe as well. I'm not so sure about that. But in Australia at the moment, we can stay separate. But as things get poorer and more degraded, I think they will start drawing on that resource more and more. So I would expect to see that more and more.
Very good.
Same in America. In America, politics and the media, i.e. like Hollywood, which is a different type of sport, are completely intertwined, as you know.
Yes, this is the cultural things. Like that is the way that we will improve. The more we can understand the different cultures, we can take better strategy, and we can create a new nations and with a better strategy. Anyway, there is another issue, because I think you are talking about the blockchain technology and this kind of thing. So there is an audience. Her name is Alea Ahmed from Malaysia. She said, "Hello. Do you think that people are facing challenges when the society like become cashless, or like maybe she want to know about the like blockchain technologies and like cashless society, what the procedures, and what's your opinion on that?"
So blockchain does not necessarily mean cashless. Blockchain technology is a different type of technology to the cashless currency type of technologies like Bitcoin or the stable coins or the other types of coins. And those only continue to get larger because people continue to pump money, fiat currency, into those enterprises. Now, but blockchain is a very, very interesting technology, and it's a very different technology, and it can be integrated into many facets, if not every facet of human existence. So blockchain is a very big conversation. It's a very different conversation to currency. But because blockchain is so big, it usually gets lumped into cashless society. Now, do you want a cashless society? No. And I would say to all the peoples or all around the world, never advocate for a cashless society, ever. Because once you have a cashless society, you lose all your freedom. You will all your political views, your economic views, any views that you have, anything you shared online, any people you vote for, anything like that can be analyzed, and you can have your accounts switched off in any sort of totalitarian way. And so, never advocate for a cashless society, because you want the ability as a free human being. Or as a human being, if you want to eat dinner tomorrow, you should be allowed always to just stash cash under your bed. You know what I mean? So never, ever fall into the trap of advocating for cashless. Now, Less cash? Absolutely. No, I've never said that's a bad thing. Never will say that's a bad thing. Less than 2% of the global currency around the world is cashless, and it's falling all the time. But you never want to say to a government, hey, we want to go completely cashless now. Remember that in cryptocurrency, you have no privacy in some ways. Every single transaction will be tracked, tagged, and known by every other verified user. Right now, how that works is you have to do it through a banking system. So when you make a payment from you to a merchant, bank system knows the user and can verify and accept that payment. So you're doing it through a third party, whereas on a cryptocurrency, it's all through the different computing systems. And if it doesn't work, then it means it's fraudulent because every other computing system in that system has to verify it. So you do lose a little bit of autonomy in terms of having that verified by every other user. But at the same time, because it's private, they don't know who that is or what that is. And therefore, you can gain autonomy from each transaction. So that's how cryptocurrency simultaneously don't have any privacy, but also have all the privacy. So it's kind of an interesting because we never advocate for a cashless economy, especially in the currency world, because if you say the wrong thing or share the wrong thing or the government doesn't agree or the bank doesn't agree, you're going to lose your autonomy and you'll be wondering why you can't pay for goods and services tomorrow. And that's pretty scary.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this is very interesting discussion today. The last question from your side, like as you are thinking about the techno-progressive issues and the many good initiatives, even in global context and the global relationships. My last question is that what do you think? What will happen next 3 years based on the technological innovations and the integrations with the technological strategy? What are your observations? What do you think?
Okay, so the next 3 years, you will see, we're starting to see reversal in global technology now. I think we've hit peak globalization, and we are starting to see a reversal of that. And you can see that with COVID already. Firms have stopped investing globally. There's a reshuffling of supply chains and stuff like that. So what does that mean? That means big technological advances in local-driven technology. So that's 3D printing, that's local-driven manufacturing, that's drones in the air, that's delivery systems. If you're in India, for example, you're going to see a lot of your call centers just not exist anymore. The era of the call center in India is over now, as a lot of for example, in America, either people are working from home, which means they'll take up those call center jobs, or all those call center jobs will be shipped to Mexico. You're going to see a reduction in a lot of globalized economies of scale, and you're going to see a lot more innovations in localized economies of scale. You're going to see a lot more technologies that are focused on local produce, local agriculture, local innovations, trains, planes, automobiles, anything that does stuff between smaller points of the earth quicker and faster. Anything that can enhance smaller, more local operations of globalization to replace the big, long supply chains that are now disappearing. You will see a reduction in electricity across the world. Therefore, you will also see a rise in homegrown electricity generation techniques, because as these countries deglobalize, they don't want to lose what they had. They don't want to lose their internet. They don't want to lose their electricity and all that. So they will start to come up with homegrown, innovative ways to get that electricity, get that power and all that. So you'll see all these funny things that will kind of look kind of strange, but it's a way that they can get electricity and power, basic needs. You also see new types of innovations towards sucking off the Starlink enterprise because the internet itself is about to be under attack. We've already seen this with the undersea cables between the US and China. They're arguing about the undersea cables of the internet. And all of the interconnectivity will be under attack, especially with the increase of cyber warfare and stuff like that. So huge innovations in software and cyber and things like that. You're going to see a massive boom in the electric cars. Electric cars are coming down the pipeline in a big way. They won't impact India or Bangladesh or anything like that, but you're going to see that in the United States in a big way. And some smaller effects of that in more nationalized ways in India and China and other places. You're going to see technology wars between states. So you're in, say, Bangladesh or in Myanmar or wherever, and you're going to be you're going to have to pick one or the other. China will say, pick our technology, which is the same as America's technology, and you're going to have to pick based on political decisions, or innovate your own. So you might see third countries not choosing a technology based on one or the other, and might be trying to innovate their own. A lot of this will be impossible, and they will have to pick. And picking means that they're choosing a side. And you can see this already with Huawei, for example, the 5G networks. Countries are struggling if they should let Huawei operate or not. So there's going to be a huge steering towards local innovation, local technologies, deglobalization technologies, steering away from big globalization technologies. And also, after 3 years, the next 10 years is mostly going to be innovations in food security and security and Navy, Air Force, anything to do with logistical control. That's where a lot of the technology will be pumped into, because as America withdraws, countries will have to secure and defend their own shipping lanes, which means they have to now do 50 years of research in 10 years.
Okay, this is very interesting discussions, and dear audience, he has a very beautiful program, Archer Reports. You can watch more from YouTube's, and he has a very dynamic idea on the present world. He knows how to make a better technopolicy, technological strategy, and which is really important for the country he knows, and he knows how to make diplomatic relationships and around the world. He has a better understanding about the globalizations. So this is very important. The more we can understand the globalizations, we can interact our knowledge with the more global peoples, we can create more value. That is the objective of World Talent Economy Forums. We want to bring more talent peoples, and we want to share your views, your thought, and your strategy, and by which we can create a better global citizens, and we can improve our lives. So thank you for the brilliant sessions. Hopefully in the future, in our techno policy discussion, we will invite you, and this is a very good session for World Talent Economy Forum. Thank you from our side.
I want to thank you very much, and I've fixed my software, and I'd love to have you back on the show really soon. We really enjoyed you over there, and for everyone, the reason I'm speaking very quiet is because it's late here, and I've got roommates, so usually I'm more animated, but right now I'm very quiet. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for your time and everything.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.